Was born on May 12, 1907, in Hartford, Connecticut. She broke many unspoken rules of her time. As the daughter of a prominent urologist and a leading suffragette, she had a unique background. Hepburn was the second of 6 children and grew up participating in progressive activities such as lobbying for birth control rights. She embodied a liberal spirit long before the term hippie existed. As Hepburn later recalled, I learned early what it is to be snubbed for a good cause. And that's how I feel every time I tell a book club that The Help is racist. Hepburn's parents encouraged their children to develop both their minds and bodies, and all the siblings participated in sports. Katharine embraced golf, a sport she would play for the rest of her life, and a perfect opportunity for wearing bold trousers. At the age of 14, Hepburn discovered the body of her older and much beloved brother, Tom, who had apparently hung himself. Her family refused to accept that it was a suicide, insisting instead that it had been an accident. However, Tom's death and her family's avoidance of the issue traumatized Hepburn and would have a lasting impact on her life. She started using Tom's birthday as her own, dropped out of high school, and continued her education with the help of private tutors. She eventually attended Bryn Mawr, her mother's alma mater, where she struggled with her grades and was caught smoking in her room. However, a turning point came when she realized that if she improved her grades and quit smoking, she could audition for a play. This opportunity offered a perfect outlet for the theatrical skills she had developed during the lively debates at the Hepburn family dinner table. One role led to another, and fast forward several years to Hepburn, who was then doing a lot of understudying off Broadway. At some point, she married her college sweetheart, Ludlow Ogden Smith, a man 8 years her senior. True to her character, Hepburn insisted that he change his name to S. Ogden Ludlow so that her legal surname wouldn't be something as dreadfully ordinary as Smith. You can see where this is headed. Hepburn was a force to behold. She was tall, athletic, pushy, and in the beginning rather lacking in talent. But in 1932, she read for the lead in The Warrior's Husband, a Greek fable that went well with Hepburn's most accentuated qualities. She won the role and did a lot of posturing in a Greek warrior costume that highlighted her flat chest and fantastic posture. This earned her great reviews and caught the attention of Hollywood, which, following the transition to sound films, was actively seeking actors with performance styles better suited to this new medium. Acting in silent cinema was a completely different experience. It required more emphasis on physicality and less on verbal expression. RKO held her screen test for A Bill of Divorcement with George Cukor, an emerging director who had joined the studio to collaborate with the rising producer David O. Selznick. In a short time, both men would become giants in their respective fields, and Hepburn was fortunate to intersect with both of them at such a young age. When Cukor saw her screen test, he recognized her unique talent. As he later recalled, there was this odd creature. She was unlike anybody I'd ever seen. He intended to cast her as the daughter of John Barrymore, the grandfather of Drew Barrymore. However, Hepburn, known for her spirited personality, demanded a weekly salary of $1,500, an unprecedented amount for a brand new, untested actress. Director George Cukor encouraged RKO to meet her demands, and they ultimately agreed to a short-term contract, just long enough to see if the film would succeed. Those captivating eyes. Hepburn from The African Queen would have called her a complete ninny. However, at this point, Hepburn hadn't yet become the iconic figure we know today. She was simply another stage actress trying to make her mark, though she had a bit more spunk and energy. A Bill of Divorcement was a huge success, and more importantly, it earned her a long-term contract with RKO. This film also marked the beginning of her collaboration with director George Cukor, with whom she would work 9 more times over the next 2 decades. Following Divorcement, she portrayed a character inspired by Amelia Earhart in Christopher Strong. She then appeared in Morning Glory, a 1930s tale that captures the Star-is-Born narrative that Hollywood loves to create and audiences enjoy watching. Hepburn portrays a young, inexperienced stage actress who is eager for a breakthrough. As shown in the clip below, she captures the essence of cloying over-eagerness perfectly. After enduring various challenges and receiving numerous acting lessons, she finally lands a small role in a new show when a handsome man, played by Douglas Fairbanks Jr., agrees to cast her. The star of this new show, blonde, demanding, and quite difficult, begins making enormous contract demands and ultimately leaves the production. Then what do you know? Hepburn steps in to take her place, launching herself into stardom. While the film doesn't precisely mirror Hepburn's own rise to fame, it's close enough for the fan magazines to grab onto, and audiences, both then and now, love the idea of a star reenacting their own creation myth on screen. Hepburn won an Academy Award for her performance, but Hepburn mania was already well underway, fueled by her role as Jo in the Cukor-directed version of Little Women, released in late 1933. To clarify, Winona Ryder will always be my personal interpretation of Jo, while Kirsten Dunst will forever be that bratty Amy. However, Katharine Hepburn may be the most perfect portrayal of Jo of all time.
See the horrible look in my eyes, and you shrink back trembling. Go ahead, go ahead. Well, get into the mood, Amy. Get into the mood. Now, when I stop toward you with wicked intentions. Oh, Amy. You. Draw back in horror, covering your eyes with your hands. Roderigo! Ah! Save me! Ah!
Just look at her with Laurie, and then there's that blasted Professor Bear. Katharine Hepburn embodied the spirit of Jo. She was a leader in her family and an independent woman, intelligent, vivacious, and confident, despite lacking the traditional beauty of her sisters and peers. She knew who she was and found happiness in her choices. The publicity for the film highlighted Hepburn's request to have one of her dresses modeled after a gown worn by her grandmother, which was preserved in a tintype. Hepburn was a New Yorker, and so was Jo. Both Hepburn and Jo had strong, assertive personalities. It's important to remember that Little Women has long been a crucial text, and any actress who could effectively portray Jo would become widely recognized for that role. In this way, the combination of Morning Glory and Little Women helped to shape Hepburn's star image for the rest of her career. Despite efforts to capitalize on her star image over the next 6 years, things did not go as planned. She portrayed the title role in Spitfire, 1934, a determined middle-class social climber in Alice Adams, 1935, and delivered a remarkable cross-dressing performance in Sylvia Scarlet. Over the years, Sylvia Scarlet has evolved into a significant work for feminist and queer film theory. If you're writing a paper on filmic gender performance, there's an unwritten rule to include this photo, even if it's just as a quirky feminist gif at the end. I mean, seriously, that's one beautiful boy. While audiences have historically found humor in men dressing as women and the resulting comedic antics, women who cross-dress are ironically seen as more transgressive, making it less popular. For many men, a woman who cross-dresses is seen as publicly declaring that she no longer needs to worry about being attractive to men. This idea terrifies them even more than the prospect of a woman gaining the right to vote. Dressing like a man often meant rejecting traditional codes of femininity, which represented a challenge to patriarchy. Hepburn embodied this both on and off the screen. Rather than appearing slovenly, she embraced a casually preppy style that we now associate with the sleek lines of J. Crew's androgyny. However, there emerged a perception that Hepburn lacked sex appeal or was seen as sexless. I believe Hepburn was definitely ahead of her time. Back then, it was uncommon for women to dress as men. Some people also speculate that Hepburn might have been in the closet, although I don't have any proof of that. During that era, many were opposed to same-sex relationships, and numerous celebrities, including some of your favorites, were also in the closet. This was intriguing because around this time, Hepburn started a romance with Howard Hughes, a millionaire, charming socialite, and gradually eccentric figure. Cary Grant introduced them while she was filming Scarlet. According to The Aviator, they enjoyed golfing on vibrant green courses, went flying together, and Hughes eventually insisted on making her his wife. Oh, by the way, she and her husband had divorced a few years after Hepburn moved to Hollywood to pursue her career. The fan magazines were enamored by this, especially with Hepburn's beaming smile contrasting against a glowering Hughes. Hepburn embodied strength in Mary of Scotland and portrayed a woman who bore a child out of wedlock in A Woman Rebels. She always had a romantic interest, yet both films, like many of her others, emphasized that her true romance was with herself. In Stage Door, she portrayed an actress who moves into a boarding house filled with fellow actresses, including Ginger Rogers and Lucille Ball, but ends up alienating them with her haughty demeanor and self importance. This serves as a clever commentary on Hepburn's often discussed attitude toward Hollywood as a whole. Stage Door received a nomination for Best Picture. However, it, along with other films after Little Women, was a significant disappointment. While melodrama and historical pieces had initially garnered Hepburn her acclaim, she had since lost that appeal. RKO seemed unsure of how to adapt the sharp-tongued, witty character into a woman that both male and female audiences would enjoy watching on screen. To tackle this challenge, the studio decided to try something different. In 1938, they paired Katharine Hepburn with Cary Grant in what would become Hepburn's signature role, that of a screwball comedian. Bringing a Baby, directed by Howard Hawks, features Cary Grant sporting adorable science nerd glasses and includes various lions and tigers. Despite being regarded as one of the best comedies of the 20th century today, it was initially a massive flop, losing $365,000, an astonishing sum in classic Hollywood dollars. It lost money because it didn't gross much money, but Hawks also allowed the production to go way over budget. Apparently, wrangling cheetahs is expensive. Hepburn's situation was deteriorating. After a series of unsuccessful performances, she had set her sights on playing Scarlett O'Hara in David O. Selznick's highly anticipated adaptation of Gone with the Wind. However, Russell found her lacking in raw sexuality and chose to cast a captivating British actress instead. Hepburn, however, had different intentions. RKO offered her a role in a low-quality B-movie titled Mother Carries Chickens, which clearly fell into the B-picture category, similar to Pootie Tang. Hepburn declined the offer and chose to buy out the remainder of her contract instead. During her time on stage, she understudied for the lead role in Holiday, a role that became very special to her. She convinced Columbia Pictures to produce the film, with George Cukor directing and Cary Grant as her co-star. Holiday took everything exquisite about Hepburn's image, her spunk, obstinance, and frustration with the connotations of wealth, along with her radiant intelligence, and used them as bait for men. In Holiday, Grant starts the film engaged to his wealthy and conventionally attractive fiancée. However, he gradually realizes that what he truly desires is a companion, a woman like Hepburn who shares his playful nature, engages in complex verbal debates, and challenges him on his insincere claims. Check out their fantastic first encounter below. In summary, Grant discovers that he wants a smart woman who will always challenge him. The film performed moderately well, but Hepburn was still labeled box office poison, a term frequently used during Hollywood's golden age. In the past, movie theaters were not all owned by large corporate chains. Instead, they were a combination of studio-owned establishments like the Paramount Theater owned by Paramount and independently owned theaters. Each year, studios would conduct surveys among theater owners to determine which stars consistently attracted audiences and which ones were avoided. This informal and somewhat subjective survey, where theater owners created lists from memory, was then compiled into top stars rankings. If a star appeared on the box office poison list, it gave studios even more reason to assign them low-quality projects until their contracts expired. This approach cleverly shifts the responsibility for a film's success or failure directly onto the star, while disregarding the roles of the studio, director, screenwriter, supporting actors, publicity team, and exhibitors in either promoting or undermining the film. Hepburn exchanged her career in Hollywood and her relationship with Howard Hughes for the vibrant theater scene in New York. Playwright Philip Barry crafted a script just for her, creating a role that, similar to her performance in Holiday, would highlight the most charming and captivating aspects of her star persona and acting strengths, particularly her ability to portray a happy drunk. The result, The Philadelphia Story, was a huge success. Hepburn, being the clever and shrewd person she was, secured the rights to the play. After it concluded its run, she returned to Hollywood and received numerous offers from the studios. Ultimately, Hepburn chose to work with MGM, but insisted that George Cukor direct the adaptation. When the two actors she originally wanted for the role, Clark Gable and Spencer Tracy, were unavailable, she settled for Cary Grant and Jimmy Stewart. This situation is somewhat akin to Lady Mary settling for Cousin Matthew after her fiancé dies in the Titanic disaster. Hepburn understood that audiences expected more from her classic image, the very image that had alienated them during the late 1930s. She aimed to subvert expectations. Not only did she make her entrance in the film by falling flat on her back, which represented what many people wished would happen to her, but she also asked MGM's top costume designer, Adrian, to create a wardrobe that combined the square silhouette most associated with Joan Crawford with a more glamorous cut. It was as if he were softening the edges of the Hepburn image while ensuring that its vibrancy and structure remained intact. The dresses, along with Hepburn wearing them, are outstanding. The film adaptation of A Philadelphia Story was a massive success. If you've seen it, you know why. The film features a lot of fast-paced dialogue and circular conversations, with Jimmy Stewart coming across as hilarious and drunk rather than didactic, which is typical in most of his other films. In contrast, he often appears creepy in the movies he made with Hitchcock.
Never see Mr. C.K. Dexter Haven again. I'll be... Isn't that awful?
They're friends of your father's.
Wouldn't you know it? What are they? Tap dancers or just musical comedy producers?
Oh, well, that's hardly fair to your father's interest in the arts.
Art, my eye. The art of putting up $100,000 to display the shapely legs of...
Everything about the situation is perfect. The timing is ideal. The dresses are beautiful and everything seems flawless except for the annoying little sister. She also appears in The Women, where I find myself wanting to hurt her as well. Following the success of the film, Hepburn reached out to MGM with a new project titled Woman of the Year. As her co-star, she once again wanted MGM star Spencer Tracy, a man she had never met but whose work she greatly admired. Hepburn was also seeking a long-term contract that included her approval of all stories, scripts, and directors. MGM agreed to her terms, and just like that box office poison, became one of the most powerful stars in Hollywood. The beginning of Hepburn's contract with MGM marked not only the start of her Hollywood career, but also the beginning of her long-lasting romance with Spencer Tracy, which continued until his death in 1967. Prior to signing with MGM, Tracy had established a reputation at Fox as a heavy drinker and a womanizer. His short temper often got him into trouble, including several fistfights, one of which involved a parking attendant at Fox. In 1940, while filming Woman of the Year, Tracy and Hepburn fell in love. Their on-screen chemistry was so strong that audiences could feel it, attracting many viewers to the film. This phenomenon often occurs when two stars genuinely fall in love while portraying romantic characters on screen. Nowadays, when two actors have great chemistry on screen, studios often create a sequel to prolong that chemistry until it fades. They bring back the same cast but place them in a different yet similar script, hoping to recreate the original magic. Nearly every year brought a new collaboration between Spencer and Hepburn. Their films included Without Love, The Sea of Class, State of the Union, and Adam's Rib. Over the next 30 years, Hepburn continued to make films. She could still play the romantic lead, but she had transitioned to the role of the somewhat older romantic lead, with her once tender tone becoming a bit shriller over time. She was insufferable yet humble in The African Queen, seemingly inventing the computer in Desk Set, portraying Liz Taylor's aunt in Suddenly last summer, and exhibiting political correctness in Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. This film was her last collaboration with Tracy and served as a sort of benediction to their romance and mutual appreciation for one another. Tracy passed away soon after, and out of respect for his family, who had suffered for a long time, Hepburn chose not to attend his funeral. She won the Best Actress award for her role, partly because it is believed that the Academy wanted to recognize and validate her grief. For the next 20 years, Hepburn's on-screen appearances grew further and further apart, yet her brassiness endured, shining even brighter with the luster of accumulated years. The smooth alabaster face may have wrinkled, but the spryness, the wit, and the vim and vigor remained. Many people believe that Katharine Hepburn and Spencer Tracy had an affair. I want to know what you think about this. Their romantic relationship, as complicated as it was devoted, spanned 3 decades and 9 films. In her autobiography, Me, Stories of My Life, Hepburn expressed, "It was a unique feeling I had for Tracy. I loved him. I would have done anything for him." Lauren Bacall, who was a close friend of the couple alongside her husband Humphrey Bogart, described Hepburn as blindingly in love with Tracy. Performer Gene Kelly recalled that Hepburn and Tracy would often meet during lunchtime at the studio, where they would sit together on a bench on the lot. They would hold hands and talk, enjoying each other's company, while everyone around them respected their little private world. Although it was an open secret in and around Hollywood, the studio system managed to keep their relationship under wraps. Hepburn had previously been married to Pennsylvania businessman Ludlow Ogden Smith, but they divorced in 1934. Tracy married actress Louise Treadwell in 1923, and their union produced 2 children, a son named John, born in 1924, and a daughter named Susie, born in 1932. John was diagnosed as deaf in infancy, which led Tracy to feel deep guilt about his son's hearing impairment. He believed it was a punishment for his own sins and began to distance himself from his family, according to sources. A strict Catholic, divorce was not and would never be an option for Tracy, who remained married to his wife throughout his life. An early separation would end in reconciliation, but Tracy would continue to live much of his life in hotels and rented residences away from his wife and family. Tracy would never publicly acknowledge or express his feelings for Hepburn, a stance that only fueled the myths surrounding their relationship. They were seldom seen together in public, and their separate homes helped protect Tracy's wife, as well as the interests of studio heads who were wary of audience backlash over the apparent infidelity. This affair would have breached the morality clauses that big stars of the era were required to sign. In addition to his efforts to keep his relationship with Hepburn out of the media, Tracy was also grappling with inner turmoil. He struggled with feelings of guilt stemming from his Catholic background, which contributed to frequent episodes of anxiety, depression, and insomnia. Throughout much of his adult life, he battled alcoholism. Hepburn, who once described Tracy as tortured, expressed her desire for him to be happy, safe, and comfortable. She enjoyed taking care of him, listening to him, feeding him, and supporting him in any way she could. "I tried not to disturb him. I was happy to do this," said Hepburn. Though devoted to Tracy, Hepburn continued to act, choosing roles that interested her more than fare guaranteed to be box office hits. Often away on location, she helped encourage the idea that they were not a couple and lived completely separate lives. As Tracy's health began to decline in the late 60s, Hepburn took a break from her career to care for him, stating that she simply wanted to be there so that he wouldn't worry or feel lonely. Whether their relationship was a way to disguise what was then deemed improper or one of the most profound romantic unions, the affection between Tracy and Hepburn endured until their deaths. Hepburn was with Tracy when he passed away in 1967. However, she did not attend the funeral out of respect for his family and did not publicly speak about their relationship until after the death of Tracy's wife Louise in 1983. When Hepburn was asked why she stayed with Tracy for so long despite the circumstances, she replied, "I honestly don't know. I can only say that I could never have left him. We just spent 27 years together in what was, for me, absolute bliss." David Thompson observes she was so remarkable, she may have given the misleading impression that Hollywood is interested in old people, as evidenced by the triumph of On Golden Pond, featuring the equally well-preserved Henry Fonda, which became the second highest-grossing film of 1981 and earned Hepburn her fourth Best Actress Oscar. Katharine Hepburn passed away in 2003 at the age of 96. Her death marked not just the loss of an individual woman, but the end of an era in female film stardom. This was a time when women with non-traditional beauty, powerful voices, and a willingness to defy Hollywood norms could achieve lasting success as major stars for decades.
Spencer was Catholic. Actually, his marriage was over long before he met me. Louise Tracy was in a tough spot. She'd spent her life raising their kids. One was deaf, the boy, and doing a lot of work for people who couldn't hear. It was important for her to be Mrs. Tracy. I didn't care really one way or the other. It was only after she died and after I became friends with Susie Tracy, Spencer's daughter, that I felt it was okay to talk about my feelings for him. Some people are shocked that I'd give up my independence for a man, do anything to please him, change things about myself he didn't like. What you have to understand is that it gave me pleasure to make him happy, to ease his agonies.